Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, ultimately, a win is a win. They all count the same, but that doesn't mean they feel the same.
Winning, as some might say, is good, and it always is good, but sometimes it doesn't feel as great as others. We will break down ASU's season-opening victory over Northern Arizona. Yes, it was a win. That's a good thing. Yes, it was a double-digit win. That's also good. But there is a lot to break down that was aggravating. I'm not sure if it's probably too early to really truly call it concerning because we got to wait and see. But there I think one of the stock questions or a topic of last week was, after this game, will there be like some extreme reactions? I am sure there were slews of them, and they might have been more valid than we thought would be the case, perhaps. So yeah, quite a bit to break down from ASU's season opening win over Northern Arizona, and as the Devils get set to head to SEC country to face Mississippi State this weekend.
Yeah, I got some the reactions I got DM'd to me on Twitter during the game from fans ranged from like, "Hey, that's a good NAU team that was beat them by 3 scores," to I'm starting to seriously doubt if Kenny's the right guy.
Yeah, I mean, there's football is back, and more specifically, Sun Devil football certainly is back when you hear those takes being thrown around the internet. But yes, you're gonna have some fun with it for sure. But we'll talk all about the game that was and things that may have concerned us, or maybe we think we got to kind of put it on ice and chill out for a little bit. So we're going to kind of take it from a few different angles, which I think probably represents the mindsets of a lot of Sun Devil fans right now. I'm confident we'll cover most of the gamut there. Maybe not the far extreme fire everybody thing, but we'll cover the bases.
Death, taxes, and week 1 overreactions. It's a time-honored tradition, as is us diving into the recap and looking ahead, as we are going to be talking to Mississippi State insider Brian Hadad. He's going to give us an inside look at what the Bulldogs are bringing in this rematch from last year's game. And then we'll also be talking with ASU center Ben Coleman, who has some candid words on his own performance, the performance of the offense, as well as looking ahead to the matchup at Mississippi State this Saturday night. It's going to be a very hostile atmosphere. They're having a blackout. So it's going to be interesting to see if ASU is able to come off and get a better performance. But before we dive into all that stuff, a couple of news items. And as a result of Saturday's and week 1's action, ASU fell 1 spot despite going 1-0 to number 12 in the AP poll. Now, I saw some fans kind of incredulous. We won. How dare we go down? I think it's more of a situation of other teams like Illinois and South Carolina specifically having some better, more prominent wins. Hey, maybe perhaps, the AP voters had ESPN Plus and couldn't see, some of the ASU game.
Yeah, it was the same thing that the officials were turning into at the Sun Devil game last weekend. Yeah, for me, when I saw that, at first I was a little thrown. If some of y'all saw that, I have to find the account. It's like a pretty good aggregator account where they did a like what they expect ESPN's rankings to be, and it had ASU in the 20s. I'm like, what in the world's going on here? And then you look at it, and it's literally every single SEC team for the first like Vanderbilt's like number 16, and then it's like Ohio State. I'm like, okay, I see what you did here. Yeah, to be at 12 to me is fine. I mean, preseason rankings are cool when you're ranked high and it's fun to talk about, but the reality of the situation is it probably shouldn't even come out until about a month in the season anyway. What you mentioned certainly has a lot of weight with it. Another thing that contributes, I guess, against ASU's favor, because if some of y'all might remember a couple weeks ago, I kind of just put out something random on Twitter like, hey, like ASU could be like a top 8 team after the first week if they win, and some other things happen. Well, there were, if I'm not mistaken, 3 games across the country over this past weekend where top 10 teams faced one another. And it's my understanding that in all 3 games, the poor ranked team of the matchup won the game. For example, Ohio State beating Texas. Yeah, it was 3-1, with the 3 being the defending national champion at home. So that's a little bit different. But you have LSU beating Clemson. You have Miami beating Notre Dame. So, those things, again, didn't necessarily happen in ASU's favor, because if the better ranked team of the matchup would have won, that probably would have sent the other spiraling down a little bit. So those sort of things factor in. For ASU still to be 12, honestly, I would imagine, I didn't really look at like the individual voters and what they chose, but I would imagine there are some folks out there who might be a little leery about ASU and replacing the people they have to place this year. And if they saw that game or saw the box score or just, saw anything in depth about it, they might be like, okay, my concerns are valid. So again, to be at 12 at this point in the season, perfectly fine, because in a matter of days, really, not just weeks, we're going to find out if that's legit and if that should, keep going up, or if it's just something that shouldn't have been applied to this team. So I don't think there's any reason to freak out in any way whatsoever at this point in the season about rankings.
And I believe that the point total overall for ASU actually increased. I think Wired Devils, I tweeted something out about that. So getting some more votes. But yeah, I think the only room that was made was Alabama draw in the top 10, getting trounced, I think. But of course they're Bama, so they're still ranked in I think top 20, 21 or so. But yeah, so I think that it's fine right now. We'll see where it is, heading into conference play. But yeah, I mean, just look, a couple years ago, ASU, we were bemoaning the loss of ASU to Eastern Michigan at home. Now we're complaining that they dropped to number 12 in the country.
Yeah, things can change over a 3 years. That seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. All right. So the last news item to pass along is that there was some good performances for ASU, but perhaps none better than Canyon Floyd, the punter. Maybe it's something you don't want to say coming out of the opener, but he was recognized as the co-special teams player of the week by the Big 12 Conference. First punt, not great. And Kenny Dillingham, after the game, kind of fell on the sword and said that he called the wrong punt for that situation. Afterwards, Canyon was phenomenal. Long of 58, a average on his 4 kicks on the night with 48.5 yards per boot. Pretty good. That'll get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of average is like national leader stuff if done over a full season. So even if there were a subpar punt to begin with, and he only had 4, to keep the average at 48.5 is incredible. And that's something that I think is, there are a few pretty bright spots from the game, as aggravating as it may have been. And as you'll find out, I fall in the category of people who are aggravated by that game. I thought Canyon Floyd was incredible. And in addition to just his performance in that game, if that represents season 1 to season 2 growth for him, I mean, because if you're staying anywhere, I mean, if you're in the 44 to 45 yard range, much less 48, that's going to get you in contention with all conference honors. Again, I'm not getting carried away after one game, but for him, it's definitely a so far so good situation, because in the offseason we talked about, he had a good freshman year, not bad. The biggest highlights were the fake plays, really. But if this can signify some, significant growth from year 1 to year 2, that's a major, major weapon, because, man, it really goes to show you when you got a punter that can generally flip the field. An old Jim Tressel, used to say that was like the most important, position on the roster in some cases. That can do some things for you. So that is something that you love to see.
Yeah, great. It certainly caught the attention of this Lou Groza Award voter. But yeah, good to see that, and we'll see if he's able to continue that for the rest of the season.
So, Brad, in that ball game last Saturday, NAU really hung around. We're about to go into the recap and break it down. They hung around. They stayed in the game, kind of like a pest that you can't get rid of. But if you've got pests that you need to get rid of, here's what you got to do. You got to go with some folks that you can trust. There's no better way to go than with a company of fellow Sun Devils and ASU alumni, owned and operated Nice Pest Company. Nice Pest Company serves residences and businesses all over the valley. Check this out, Sun Devil fans. You can get your first service for just $42, with 100% of those proceeds being donated by Nice Pest Company to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. So support those who support the things that you love, the ones that support Sun Devil athletics. Give your business to fellow Sun Devils with an incredible reputation who, just like you, want to do their part to help Sun Devil athletics to thrive. Nice Pest Company has sent well over 100,000 bugs to their final resting place, and with more than 200 5-star Google reviews, you can rest easy knowing that you and your family are in great hands. So whether you've got scorpions or bed bugs or roaches or little lumberjacks that are just sticking around and hanging around to the fourth quarter and you just can't seem to get rid of them, whatever it may be, or if you just want to make sure that your home never gets a visitor of that nature, give Nice Pest Company a call. Check them out online. Let them do the dirty work so you don't have to do that. You can get the peace of mind and keep that peace of mind that you deserve. It's always a nice day to support the Sun Devils, and with Nice Pest Company, it's always a nice day to be bug-free. Check them out online at nicepest.com for a free quote, and be sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Nice Pest Company.
ASU 38, NAU 19. It's a 19-point win, really 25 if you discount the last second score against ASU's third team defense. That was basically the Vegas spread was like 28 or something. So in that ballpark there, ASU got the win. We mentioned did so with putting up nearly 40 points, but it felt weird. NAU never was really in the game. I don't think anybody thought this is a game that the Devils are in jeopardy, but it was just weird. It was obviously very uncharacteristically sloppy from the Dillingham coach teams, especially the 2024 version. So many mistakes, but despite those mistakes, they still had a commanding win. But it's so this whole game is in this weird kind of nebulous gray area. And yeah, obviously, as you mentioned off the top, ASU fans have takes all across the spectrum.
So here's my thought about it, to summarize it, is in terms of effort and execution, and what I'm about to say next is the most important part, relative to reasonable expectations. That was the absolute worst of the Kenny Dillingham era at Arizona State. And folks might hear that and say, how in the world can you say that, you ridiculous jabroni? ASU won 3 games under Dillingham in 2023. Again, that relative to realistic expectations. When ASU got throttled by Utah that year, Jacob Conover was playing quarterback. No disrespect to the kid, but come on. When they got blasted by the University of Arizona, ASU was completely depleted in that game, and that was a very good Arizona team. When they got shut out by Fresno State, and that was the one I was kind of thinking about, you had Drew Pine at quarterback in that game.
8 turnovers.
And the defense killed it. They did their job.
Great defense.
The only game I can think back to where I felt like the effort and the execution were as poor as what we saw on Saturday was that Eastern Michigan game in 2022 that got numbnuts fired. So for me, I'm not saying that game altered my expectations. I'm not saying, okay, back down to 6-6 at best. Let's just focus on beating U of A at the end of the season, maybe get to a bowl, and that kind of mentality that's been around, in the past. But I'm kind of suspending expectations. I'm just saying, you know what? I'm not going to say anything up here, down here, anywhere in the middle until we see more out on the field. I just felt like the setting and the environment deserved a lot better. We know the superlative by now. It's the first opening game sellout at ASU since 1998, and thank God the game itself didn't go like that 98 game against Washington. I was a near 16-year-old in the stands watching that heartbreaker unfold in Sun Devil Stadium that night. But with the sellout, with the energy, and just being, because last season ended, obviously it was a heartbreaker, but like the Rocky movie that we compared it to, fans were in great spirits. They knew that ASU left everything out on the field in that playoff game against Texas. So they're really, though there were broken hearts, there wasn't true disappointment or anger. It was a great season. So all those things packaged together, you just wanted to see ASU come out and not have to be fancy or tricky, but just obliterate the Lumberjacks, run all over them, keep it basic as can be, but still score in the 50s or 60s and just wipe the floor with NAU. Now, of course, a lot of credit to Northern Arizona. It's a very good team. They competed. They did the things that we were told that they were going to do and had the mentality and fought in the ways that we were told that they were going to fight. A lot of credit to them. But if you're a top 12 caliber team in the FBS, it just shouldn't be a game into the late stages of it where you're like, okay, how is this actually going to work out? So it is a weird situation because I think that if ASU would have done a lot of basic things like lining up and just running the ball as normal, they could have won this game by 28 or 35 points. So we'll see how things unfold. We'll talk about it more. I'll get off my soapbox, but it's just, it was an incredibly aggravating game. And since it's the only example we have so far for 2025, there are people that can say this is not last year's team. Maybe those departures mean more than we've been telling ourselves. Maybe this is a team that has let the noise get to its head, even though we've heard a lot of things to the contrary. So yeah, there are a lot of question marks going on around this fan base as it pertains to the emotions of right now. And this weekend, I think it's going to send it one of two directions. And as we'll break down introducing Mississippi State, the importance of this game coming up this weekend really has skyrocketed, in the last few days.
I'm kind of on the other end ish of the spectrum because certainly it's not what we expected. I think my prediction was 52-13, something along those lines. But for me, this game was kind of an outlier for the Dillingham era. You mentioned it's kind of like the one that really jumped out to you most, even against that really rough 2023 season. The 12 penalties, far and away the most under a Dillingham coach team, the 93 yards, second, and some of those were obviously extremely costly. They had that sequence of the two straight, specifically wiping out a 75-yard touchdown and then a 64-yard reception by Malik McClain.
One of the most aggravating. We're not talking about like, game-winning field goals or big plays, like that kind of aggravation, but just like I kind of want to scratch the flesh off of my head. I'm so aggravated. Like that sequence of those like 3 to 5 plays between the ones that came back and the ones thereafter. That is a Mount Rushmore of aggravation right there.
Yeah, and I mean, but then you look at just what ASU was doing when they weren't shooting themselves in the foot, and they were doing the things that we thought they'd do. You look, despite all of that self-inflicted damage, averaging 7.5 yards per play on offense, 458 yards. The defense, I thought, overall was pretty solid, especially on third downs. Certainly not a perfect game, but I think that there was enough of the ASU that we expected to be there. And for me, I'm not worried about this team, but I am. I want to see if this is just the aberration that it could be, because so far in the 2 seasons plus 1 game data points that we have, this is so far and beyond like the one where they like really hurt themselves. Now, the 20, I don't know if the 2024, 2023 teams, let alone the Herm teams, making this level of mistakes, I don't think they're winning by, 19, 25 points like this. But I do think that I don't know, say it, I did say like, kind of on the other end of the spectrum ish. It makes me wonder what we got, but there's still so many key pieces here, so many of those key voices. Seeing the looks on the faces, down there on the field, I was right there by the victory bell ringing. That was a pissed off group of players. Kenny Dillingham's pissed at practice earlier today. On Tuesday, there seems to be a vibe, a message received type of thing. Talking to some of the players, they were pretty blunt in their assertions of not being happy or satisfied with the effort, with the execution. And Kenny, after the game, said that sometimes winning ugly is really beneficial because you win, but you also kind of get the kick in the ass to get things going in a gear. We'll see. I mean, it's a long season, and ASU early last year had some ups and downs before they really kind of hit their own stride. And another thing Kenny said after the game that kind of caught my attention was that he really doesn't like early season games. He hates them. And so we'll see. But I do think that it does speak to where this program is now, that a 19-point win against a ranked FCS team, FCS, but is really kind of a situation where people are getting a little freaked out, a little panicked. Oh, maybe this is another year where our we're going to fall back down to earth. Maybe, who knows? I don't think so, but I think they're still in a pretty strong spot. And this is a team that all last year, and is largely the same team as last year, that responded well to the adversity, that responded well to those situations. We saw them close out the game in the fourth quarter in a better fashion. Maybe, we'll see exactly how they're going to go. And I mean, it's going to be tough. The next one's on the road in a hostile atmosphere. It's not like maybe if the games, Texas State and Mississippi State were flipped, fans would feel a little bit better. But, this is a team that has shown great resilience and great heart. And we'll see if this coaching staff, which engineered that turnaround, is able to engineer a week 1 to week 2 turnaround.
And I think like the play selection or the run to pass ratio, there are a lot of things about this game that are so weird for a season opener against an FCS team. Again, even a nationally ranked FCS team. You got 22 total carries to 39 pass attempts. Now, if someone were to just look at this box score, you would probably think that ASU, consistently more or less dominated on the ground. They ran for 201 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 9 yards per carry. But the total carries were pretty low, especially into I think the fourth quarter when they're, getting the clock moving. It just seemed like once they finally consistently started to line up and run the ball, they had incredible success with it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I wish I did, but it just felt like for majority of the first 3 quarters that it was like one designed run or one run by a running back for every half dozen to 8 pass plays. Like there just wasn't this effort to establish the run. Now, of course, Sam Levitt had an incredible game running the ball. If you don't include the yards lost on sacks, he almost had 100-yard game as far as, he ran for 99 gross yards. You had Kyson Brown with a good game, a lot of which was from the fake play that counted as a run, correct, in the scorebooks?
Yes, the 34-yard carry was, of his 73.
And he showed you just that incredible, dual threat in terms of a rusher and a receiver. I mean, goodness, the guy had 73 net rushing yards and 72 receiving yards. That's real even there. So there were some very solid performances. Rayleigh Brown, I mean, my goodness, he was impressive. And if you talk about the plays that were brought back by penalty or just the turf monster getting him on that punt return, the guy could have had like 300 all-purpose yards and a few touchdowns. So there's a lot of what could have been. Obviously a huge game for Jordan Tyson, but I mean, he was targeted 17 times. Kyson Brown at running back was targeted 6 times. Right, Raleek Brown targeted 5 times. So the behind Tyson, the next receiver up in terms of targets was Malik McClain with 4. Now, this next point, there were a variety of reasons why this next thing didn't happen, but it's also just kind of like unfortunate is all that group of newcomers on offense at the skill positions, you either didn't see them on the field or they didn't do much of anything. Like Kanye Udo had a couple touches there. I mean, he's credited with 2 carries for 19 yards and a 6-yard reception. But like Jaron Hamilton, man, we were hearing everything about him. He was supposed to be that deep threat, that Xavier Guillory, replacement there. Kamari Anderson, AJ Ea, Jalen Moss. I mean, these are all players that we were expecting a lot out of, and for a variety of reasons, they didn't contribute or contributed lightly. I'm not saying like, oh, they played a disappointing game. Some of them didn't even play, but it's just a disappointing aspect of the game is you don't get to see those new pieces in play. On defense, ASU could not get to the quarterback until the late stages. I think that sack by Keith Abney was the first one, and that was relatively late in the game. And man, just again, I'm just rattling off the list off the top of my head, but that the first quarter was fine. I felt good about the first quarter, but that second quarter was such a dud, and it just felt like they were just taking it a little bit too easy. And then as things progressed at the end of the game, that they really kind of ramped it up a little bit to make it look respectable. So again, there's some really solid performances and good things you like to see. Going to throw a shout out to Anthony Cooper. Awesome to see to get the tip drill interception after missing all last year. He's the longest tenured player on the roster. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he and Coben Bourget are the only ones that are still around from that previous coaching era. So again, a bit of a mixed bag. It just really defers a lot to this coming game to be like, okay, was that just them kind of playing possum and taking it easy, or are there bigger issues at play?
Yeah, the play calling was interesting because that was 22 total rush attempts, and some of those are Sam Levitt scrambles and sacks as the NCAA.
7 of them. So 15 non-quarterback carries.
Kenny made the comment earlier in the week that we're not going to hold anything back. They absolutely held things back. They played pretty vanilla, other than the fake punt, which interesting. Hey,
but I think at the time it kind of fit. You know what I mean? Like it is wild to see a fake special teams play against an FCS opponent, but I didn't hate the calls. It got some excitement, and it most importantly worked. But yeah, to have to kind of pull that out of the bag of tricks in that game, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and then so I think ultimately it was we'll see the real Sun Devil offense, I think, coming back this week, obviously with a better opponent on the road. Levitt was solid as a passer, with 247 yards, two touchdowns. My God, that touchdown, the second Tyson touchdown. Yeah. Wow. I mean, and that's the kind of stuff, we were talking about, throughout fall camp, just like he makes the insane look routine. And so that's awesome. And But the target share, and I even asked Malik McClain about this a little bit earlier today about like how does it feel, and he's like, "Oh, hey, we won. If he has 30 catches and we win, I don't care as long as we win." But yeah, the Jaron Hamilton playing a snap, that's interesting because he was absolutely obliterating the defense throughout much of fall camp. But Dillingham said that this is what the NAU defense gave them, and I honestly, after covering him in every game, it's interesting that he was so effusive in the praise for the NAU coaching staff. And I don't know if like any of the prior ASU coaches, I would think, okay, this is maybe just kind of trying to cover for my guys or something like that. But Kenny's just like really is kind of who he outwardly and publicly is who he is. So I think he might just be like, wow, like they really played a great defensive game. Their scheme kind of messed us up. He drew a lot of parallels to the Texas State game last year in terms of a defense that really plays an unorthodox style that kind of threw them some looks. But Kenny was confident that the staff has the film now; they can make adjustments. And he said, well, we'll be ready for the copycats if people try to throw that same defensive stuff at him again. And obviously, in the second half, after they had time to make adjustments, a little bit better. But ultimately, though, you want to get your best player like a Jordan Tyson the ball as much as you can, but at the same point, you just got to that load share has got to be a little bit better. Mateer had a catch, that vaunted tight end room as well. I think overall the offensive line didn't play well, not terrible. But Sam was under a little bit more pressure than I thought, and perhaps that could be some of those exotic looks. But still, all those like kind of butts. 7.5 yards per play, 450 yards. And if they have just maybe a couple less penalties, they're well over 500 yards and pushing 50 points. I don't know. It's such a weird thing to be like kind of what ifing after week one, but yet here we are.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, if you take it, I know you can what if your way to winning the national championship every single year of existence, but if you take a couple plays away, it's a much different deal here. It's interesting to hear about the aspect of like taking what the defense gave them. I mean, I certainly understand that in a lot of scenarios, you're going to do that. A great example is the Mississippi State game last year when they kept doing that 3-man front and Gadaboo was running all over them. When they give you that, you do what you do. In a game like this against NAU, all respect involved, it shouldn't matter what the defense gives you. And in all reality, again, ASU ran for an average of over 9 yards a carry for the game. That means ASU can line up and run all over them. Again, everything is fine, but it's a dangerous thing to have Sam Leavitt out there throwing the ball nearly 40 times for the game. That's putting him at risk of potential injury. It's a turnover risk. I mean, people just simply throw more interceptions than people fumble the ball kind of thing, to where if you run the ball a little bit more, turn the ball over that one time on the interception. But those are just things that, you never really want to see your Heisman candidate quarterback out there throwing the ball in excess of 35 times, nearly 40 times for the game. Again, it worked out. It's okay. There were some, I did hear like some conspiracy type theories of, folks wondering, was this like a stat padding thing for Leavitt and Tyson?
Oh yeah. I think I might've said that last week. I think, yeah, the Heisman campaign, I think is not going to impact what they do. But I think it's on the radar.
Yeah. So, I mean, was that part of the reason why? I mean, it was Tyson, and, Leavitt all day. And again, those are your 2 star All-American players. So it makes sense that you're going to use them. But it's just like, dang, again, 17 targets for Jordan Tyson. The next most was Kyson Brown at 6. So, nearly triple the next guy. So a weird game. And like I said, I think that, all things considered, just really shifts the importance of this upcoming game in the eyes of Sun Devil fans. And the best thing that can happen is that importance is, mimicked and understood by the staff and players. And the best scenario to me would be to see the things happen in this game against Mississippi State that didn't really happen last week, so that Kenny Dillingham can stand before everyone at the Monday press conference and say, I told you, we were just doing our thing, taking it easy against NAU, but then we ran for, 300 yards. We had 2 guys that rushed for 100 yards and we got the tight ends involved, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So that would be great. But yeah, it's a strange feeling. And I don't know know that in, following Sun Devil football, if there was a game that just kind of stuck in me in a negative way, that was a victory like this one did. Because there have been so many seasons of just like, all right, like it's slightly above mediocre football, so winning in any capacity, there can be no complaints. So we've been, informed to believe that times are different now, and I know everybody wants to believe that and have that be the case. And so with that being the case, the expectations increase. And again, I think just a lot of folks in that sold out crowd just wanted to see them blow the gates off the opener, and that did not happen, but they did have, a 3-score victory.
Yeah, overall, I think that we are going to see some of those things. I think you're going to see more of the run game get going on Saturday. I do think that you'll probably see a better performance from the pass rush. Although they 3 sacks overall, but 8 pressures, and I think Prince Torba had 3. I think that got going. I think 8 overall tackles for loss, one off the Dillingham era high for the team. We should mention that we haven't talked about Jesus Gomez. Made a kick, and then missed from 57.
Yeah,
but I mean,
he's
got the range.
Yeah, I mean, and 57 is something where if you're at least in the universe of it, and not one of these crazy kicks we see from time to time where it like goes into the student section or something like that. I mean, that is not going to be a high accuracy thing, but the thing is he can do it, and so there's high confidence in that. But yeah, otherwise looking solid. Still some challenges in coverage, special teams. So I remember like one of my keys last week was just make it a game on special teams, all units considered, that you don't say, oh, here we go again, or here we're going to go again. And I thought that there was definitely more good than bad. I mean, it was not, it was still a great return by Relic Brown. Could have been a touchdown. Some of the coverage, NAU was just getting too much yardage on returns, but the actual kick game for ASU I thought was really solid.
Yeah, and Kenny kind of fell in the sort of mentioned earlier about the first punt, but yeah, man, Relic, man, just that turf monster got him. That would have been quite a way to get things going. Who knows how the energy goes, but I think I mean it's just probably a matter of time he stays healthy. He's going to take a kick or a punt back at some point. But yeah, Joe, I mean a win is a win, but definitely raises the bar in this new era of expectations.
This one is for Ben, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good, because I was going to do a different tie-in for the Know Your Enemy, so I'm glad I asked. Okay. Now, folks, as you all know, we are speeding our way already through this 2025 season. We're on to week 2. And if you're jonesing for a new vehicle, just like you're jonesing to see the Sun Devils get a dominant victory out in Mississippi State this weekend, your first and only call needs to be to Jones Auto Group. Jones has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state. It is a fact that Jones Auto Group was the first and the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes, and it is your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. In addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations, which can save you some big-time money. I know taxes on like a pack of gum may not add much, but when you're buying a vehicle, that's a lot of money. So if they can help you save on that, that is a very big deal. So it's a great setup. You can possibly save some money compared to other car dealerships, and you get to work with a fellow Sun Devil, treat you like family, and again, potentially set you up for some big savings there. So here's what you got to do. You should have this number in your phone by now, but if you don't, make this the day that you do it. Contact Parker Jones, not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation Arizona State alum, and just like you, a diehard Sun Devil fan. So you're not going to talk to some car salesman, not going to get that lot experience. You're going to talk to the owner, and he's going to get you set up. So take down his number. It's 602-881-8998. Again, 602-881-8998 for Parker Jones at Jones Auto Group. You can browse their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, so we just talked about ASU's win over NAU. One of those elements from that game that really stuck out was Ben Coleman, old friend of the program, making his first career start at center after Tuesday's practice. I caught up with Ben, got his thoughts about what he thought of the offense, his performance, and looking ahead to Mississippi State. All right, so first start at center under your belt. How do you think things went on Saturday night after you looked at the film?
I think a lot of improvement. I don't think I played well. I think that's how it should be. First game with the jitters out. I got a lot of confidence from it, but at the same time, I understood that I made too many mistakes, making sure I put my guys in better positions. And I feel like that reflected. The whole team feels that way as well, but specifically for the O-line. We felt like we could have put together a way better performance, and it should have been versus a team like that. They were a good team, so no disrespect to them. But at the same time, there was stuff that we could have done better, got to some more guys, made better reads on it, be able to help the running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends up.
How do you feel like the team mentality is right now? Obviously, you guys got a multi-score win, but it seems like at least like during the ringing of the victory bell, not a whole lot of smiles on the face. It seems like you guys are maybe not a whole lot of happy of getting that week 1 performance.
Yeah, just hungry. We went back to the basics. I'll be honest, I don't know if I've practiced that hard in a long time, just because it's the hunger. We brought the hunger back. Xavier and Alfred, guys that are banged up. We made the decision collectively as older guys. You talk about Crook, Keyshawn, just like, yeah, this is the week we got to turn it back up, right? We go through camp, it's long, it kind of gets monotonous, the same people. You go face another team. It doesn't matter who it is. Like I said, nameless faceless opponent. But we feel like we didn't perform well as an entire team, all phases. Even the special teams, we felt like we should have got one. They performed well, but we felt like we should have got the punt return, right? League feels that way. So we all felt that way. So I think a lot of guys are hungry this week, and we look to continue that the rest of the season.
How'd you feel about the communication, not just between the offensive line, but between you and Sam Levitt?
Oh, it was good. It was good. They brought a lot of pressure, a lot of 8-man looks, and that's something that you got to take time and understand, man. They're bringing a lot of guys, right? So make sure that we get 5. We want to be able to put 5 on 5, and sometimes 6 on 6, sometimes 7 on 7, whatever that look is. But our communication is really good.
How about playing on the road at an SEC school? Is that something that gets the guys up?
Well, I think SC, obviously I was a former Pac-12 guy. I played on the road, Oregon, Washington. Those are really loud stadiums as well, known for their sound. I remember when I played at Oregon in the huddle, I couldn't even hear my quarterback Chase Garbers at the time. Blackout, Friday night. So I think the reality is that it'll be a great environment. We're excited. This is what it's all about. This is what football is all about. You should be excited to go play on the road at another stadium in a big-time environment. It's up to you to be able to pride the crowd.
The penalty issue is obviously first and foremost, 12th and highest under Daly. What do you attribute some of that kind of an uncharacteristic number of penalties for you guys?
I don't know. I think the only thing we can control as far as offensive line go, when you talk about the holding penalties, whether that's either us or on the perimeter, make sure we get our hands inside. So that's just something we had to re-emphasize as far as holding. Everything else as far as goes, defense or whatever, I think we just have to get a little bit more dialed back in. And I think that this week will be a lot better as far as penalty-wise.
What do you think about Kyle Scott, his journey here at ASU, going from community college to playing alongside you at the offensive line here at ASU?
Yeah, we're from the same area. We're same class in high school. And I think it's unique how football brings every journey together. So now we're at the same point playing next to each other. Cali boys, Inland Empire, so we rep it hard. So I'm super excited to play next to him. And I'm super excited that he's been able to persevere through everything that he's went through. We talk about starting football late. Max as well. We had a lot of arguments, last year, left side versus right side, which one was better. And we used to argue all the time. And I think that was the healthy competition that we had, because you had 2 guys that were still explosive, super strong, that hadn't played for a long time. You had 2 guys on the left side that had played for a long time. So being able to mix those guys up and play with both of them now, kind of play with both sides, I think it's unique, and he's done a great job.
So what are your recollections on last year's game with Mississippi State, and as you look ahead to this rematch?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. I feel like I had a bad meal the night before. I feel like I didn't perform that well. We look back at some film, and I did some good stuff, but I feel like my pad level was too high. And we feel like that, in totality for the O-line. So we've been re-emphasizing that. Make sure our pad level is a lot lower, because although we rushed for that many, we kind of look back at it like, man, how do we rush for that many? Because we still felt like our pad level was really high. Yes, we were a hat on a hat, so we were a guy on a guy, but our pad level was really high. So I look forward to eating a little bit better this week, and then also make sure our pad level is lower.
The guy like Sam Levitt, and what he can do with his legs, 2 long rushing scores on Saturday. What was it like just kind of blocking, knowing a guy that is in the pocket? Maybe not. Maybe he's running around out there.
I think as an offensive lineman, you got to be smart. He's a mobile guy, right? So you got to know when to detach from a guy. But on that same token, I think it's our advantage, right? I know they did a little bit of QB spy last week with their quarterback. I'm sure they'll throw some QB spy this week, because he really has the ability to run. I think last year when they faced Sam Levitt, they didn't think he had the ability to run. And I think he showed it for the first time. Like, wait, can this quarterback run? Does he really have wheels? But I tell a quick story. One of their D tackles, I don't remember the number, but he was like, damn, how is he that fast? And I don't know if he was talking to me. I don't know who he's talking to, but I for sure heard him, and I'm like, man, that guy's fast. I think he's super underrated. And I think people still underrate his speed, so maybe this year they won't.
A lot of new faces on that Bulldog defense this year. What are kind of the things that jump out to you guys early on and kind of looking at this 2025 version of the Mississippi State?
Yeah, big, strong. I think the philosophy is still the same. Big, strong. You got some 2 gappers. And they have some active guys as well. They do a good job of mixing it up. They have number 2 playing star position. A lot of respect to him. He's a good player. He'll come in the box, and he's not scared. So anytime you have a player that really is not scared, he don't care if a guard's pulling. He don't care if he's going to the B gap. He don't care if he's coming to the C gap. When they run their solid looks, it doesn't matter. He's ready to come in and lay a hat down. So a lot of respect to them in their defense.
So in a second, we're going to get to know our enemy for this weekend's game. But for right now, this one right here is for the homies. If you want a restaurant that's as passionate about supporting Sun Devil athletics as you are, well, you got to make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. Burrito Express began with a vision, a family-run Mexican restaurant serving authentic food with fast, friendly service and deep community roots. Today, that vision lives on, making Burrito Express a true multi-generational, family-led legacy. From the beginning, it's always been about flavor, family, and the people they serve. At Burrito Express, they're more than just a place to eat, they're part of the neighborhood. From day one, they've focused on bold flavors, fast service, and real connections with the communities they serve. It's that mix of quality, culture, and care that makes Burrito Express different. You can eat or order delivery from their restaurant locations in Tempe, Chandler, Scottsdale, and Gilbert, or check out their fast and fresh locations inside select Circle K stores in Gilbert and Queen Creek. Check them out online at theburritoexpress.com and follow them on social media at BurritoEXP on Twitter and Instagram, Burrito Express AZ on TikTok, and on Facebook at facebook.com/yourlocalburritojoint.
Yeah, I went there after practice on Tuesday because it is, of course, a game in the state of Mississippi. And Kyson Brown, partnering with our friends at Burrito Express, his Sip Lemonade, highly recommend. I had the strawberry lemonade today. Excellent. All right, joining us now, we're returning to the program after a great appearance last year, Brian Hadad of SuperTalk Mississippi. Give us an insight into Mississippi State and the Bulldogs looking for better fortunes here in 2025. Brian, welcome back. How are you today?
Good to be with you. I want to let all of your listeners and viewers know plenty of hotels here in Starkville. If you need a hotel in Starkville, I can hook you up with some recommendations. We've got hotels here. Don't be fooled.
Okay, good. Because I did have some some questions there at the back end because some ASU fans will be making the trek out there.
Absolutely.
So let's start off. Year one under Jeff Lebby, obviously a challenging one to say the least for Mississippi State. What was kind of the overall reaction to the fan base after last season, and kind of maybe how are they feeling about Coach Lebby heading into 2025?
A lot of disappointment last year. I think Mississippi State fans, by and large, knew that there was a rebuild, whether Lebby wanted to admit that or not last year. But 2-10 was not a number I think most Mississippi State fans were comfortable seeing from their team, especially the way they played in those games. If you actually watch the games and you see a team that couldn't get stops defensively, that struggled a lot of times trying to move the chains. Losing Blake Shapen, fourth game of the season, certainly hurt them, having to play a true freshman quarterback. But it felt like they should have been a better team. Losing to Toledo in week 3 was not something Mississippi State fans were expecting and were happy with. Coming into this season, last week winning at Southern Mississippi, winning pretty emphatically, it felt like, you can take a little bit of a breath if you're a Mississippi State fan. You don't feel like you're going to have that embarrassing loss that you did a year ago. But this is a massive game. This is a defining game for Jeff Lebby on Saturday. If he can win this game, he can find a way to do that. You get everybody on board and you can start moving forward with this team. A loss is going to keep people doubting him for the time being. So I would say that most Mississippi State fans are very much wait and see with Jeff Lebby still to this point.
So over the offseason, the Bulldogs are really active in the portal, bringing in a host of new faces as well, kind of like what ASU did over the first couple cycles with Coach Dillingham. How would you kind of overall evaluate the overall kind of net additions through the portal for Mississippi State, how they've reshaped the roster and some of the things that they were looking to address coming off of 2024?
I think coming off of a 2-10 season, they did about as well as you could have hoped for. They got a lot of depth, which they needed defensively, especially on the defensive line. If you saw this past week, Will Whitson, one of their transfers, was named SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week today. All three levels of the defense, defensive line, linebacker, cornerback, and safety were touched by the transfer portal in some way, shape, or form. And just a lot of new faces there for Mississippi State. On the offensive side of the ball, they had to reshape their receiver room. Their top 3 receivers from a year ago, one to the NFL, one transferred to Missouri, one transferred to Texas A&M. So they brought in a bunch of new guys there. The offensive line, that portal window was active even after spring. State started 2 guys this past Saturday who were not here in the spring that they got in the second portal window. So they're still trying to figure out some things on the offensive line. So when you go 2-10, you're going to have that kind of turnover. You've got to get new players in. You've got to get more depth. State was able to do that. I don't know if they got the difference makers that they need. I don't know if they have star players, but they have better players than they had a season ago.
So I was watching the opener against Southern Miss, and it seemed almost kind of like a tale of two halves a little bit. The Bulldogs really came on strong in that second half there. What were some of your major takeaways from week one?
Yeah, first half, they weren't clean. They had bad penalties, pre-snap penalties that cost them a couple of touchdowns. Defensively, they were better in that first half than I thought they were going to be. They ended up being better defensively in the whole game than I thought they were going to be coming in. Second half was more about Mississippi State being an SEC team wearing on Southern Mississippi, a Sun Belt team that just doesn't have the size and the depth that Mississippi State's going to have. So that running game started to open up for the Bulldogs, and they were able to score 3 touchdowns in the third quarter and put the game away. USM gets a late touchdown, but that's against State's third and fourth teamers when USM still had their starters in. So by and large, I think, if you were going to grade what happened Saturday for State, it's a B+ game. It wasn't completely dominant. There were still some things they have to clean up this week. But when you lose a game like State lost last year to Toledo, you can't take anything for granted. It becomes a situation where you've got to look at every game and say, well, it could go bad for them. It didn't. They were in control for the entire game. I think it was about as good as you could have hoped for. Mississippi State fans should have about as much optimism coming into this game as they possibly could.
Quarterback Blake Shapen, of course, is now back healthy after missing much of last season due to injury. What have you seen from him now heading into another year with comfort and familiarity with the system under his belt?
I thought he was good Saturday. Not great. Nothing that made me jump out of my seat or anything like that. But, threw the ball well. He completed over 70% of his passes. He did have one interception where we talked to him today. And he said, I thought Southern Miss defense was going to do this, and they did that. And so there was a guy there to pick it off. I thought the main thing with Shapen was, and I asked him about this at the press conference today, he talked to us in the offseason about trying to change his mentality a little bit, that I don't have to lower my shoulder and fight for every inch. I can get down. I can take a sack. I don't have to put myself at risk, because injuries have just been a concern for Blake Shapen his entire college career. He said he was able to do that on Saturday. There were some times where he was running and he's like, I need to get down. And he did. So if he can stay healthy, he gives Mississippi State its best chance to win. If you watch his touchdown pass to Seydou Traore, that's why they like him. It's a perfectly thrown long ball, hits the receiver in stride. He gives you that. And he's a good leader. I think the team respects him. So glad to see him coming back from injury, and hopefully he can get a full season in this time.
The backfield tandem, Devon Booth, Fluff Bothwell. Bothwell was one of my favorite G5 guys from a year ago. But what threats do that backfield tandem really kind of present to an opposing defense?
Yeah, that's the strength of State's team, is their running game, and those two guys plus Johnny Daniels, who is the third running back in there, who rushed for over 500 yards a season ago. State wants to run the football. They want to be physical. Levy's offense, it's kind of like Kiffin and Heupel. You think it's a passing offense that takes a lot of deep shots, and it does, but they are at their core a run-first offense. Booth, Bothwell, and Daniels are both very capable running backs, and State's going to look to get them involved pretty early against Arizona State. I thought State could have run the ball more than they did. I think the play splits was 40-37 run to pass. I would not have been opposed to it being 50-27. As far as that goes, I think State's success this year is going to come when they're able to run the football.
And flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, you mentioned that it was kind of a focus of reshaping the roster coming off of last year's and the defensive difficulties. What are some of the early indications of this 2025 Bulldog defense, and who are some of the key names that ASU fans got to watch out for?
Yeah, you look at State a year ago, and they couldn't stop anybody running the football. Arizona State fans are going to know that better than anyone with what Cam Scatterby was able to do against Mississippi State. They'll have nightmares about that guy for decades. This year, against Southern Mississippi, they only averaged 2.9 yards per carry. State didn't do that to anybody last year. They played an FCS team, and they averaged almost 4 yards per carry. So that's a good start for Mississippi State. Will Whitson is a name that I mentioned. Jeray Bledsoe is a guy to keep an eye on, transfer from Texas. DJ Reed is a guy I didn't have a lot of expectations for. He played really well on Saturday, a transfer from Auburn. A guy like Calvin Dinkins, who's been here, was hurt last year, did not play in the Arizona State game, got hurt in the first game and was out for the rest of the season, but he's a guy who can contribute a lot for Mississippi State. And then another guy I thought played pretty well was Malik Silla, the transfer from Texas A&M. He's more of Mississippi State terms him as the Jack. He's a guy who can put his hand in the ground, but he can also play that outside linebacker if it's a 3-3-5 or a 3-4 situation. So just a few of the names to note. The guys that were there last year, by and large, they're not there anymore. Mississippi State, they look completely different on the defensive line. They're going to have to play a much better game this year. What happened last year in Tempe, if State allows that to happen again, it will be the same result for the Sun Devils.
Devils will be looking to establish a run with a new stable of backs. So obviously quarterback Sam Levitt, also a mobile threat of his own. How are they looking to maybe do better against the run this year? Or is it just simply a matter of new and better personnel?
I think that's the biggest thing. Obviously, they didn't have any depth last year. You know, Mississippi State last year had a guy come in, Kai McClendon, as a true freshman who had to play a ton. Never would have played under most situations. And I think, you know, the previous coaching staff, I love Mike Leach, but neglected the defensive side of the ball in recruiting. Then State once he passes away, State brings Zach Arnett into the fold as the head coach and just wasn't ready for it. And State's recruiting has just suffered on the defensive side of the ball. And this is a university, a program that, you know, in the last decade plus has produced guys like Fletcher Cox and Chris Jones and Jeff Simmons, and they just don't have guys like that this year. And that was the biggest issue last year. As I said, I think they've gotten better. I think the talent level is much better. I don't know if they have a guy like I just mentioned, though. I don't know if they have a star, a guy we could see being an all-SEC player for Mississippi State. So I think State will be better defensively. I don't know if they're going to be good defensively, if that makes sense. State statistically last year was the worst team in the SEC by an incredibly large margin. I've used this stat a lot. In scoring defense, the gap between 15 and 16, I think 15 was Florida. State was 16th, right? The gap between 15 and 16 was the same as the gap between 1 and 15. It was that big of a gap. So State just couldn't help but be better defensively this year. It's just a question of, are they going to be good? I think we'll get a better idea about that Saturday night when we see how they do against this Arizona State team.
One guy that kind of jumps out on that defensive side, Isaac Smith, 127 tackles last year. I believe that was tops in the SEC. What makes him such a key contributor? And, you know, obviously sometimes maybe you don't want your safety to be your leading tackler, but, you know, what kind of impact does he have on that defense?
Well, they've kind of made him into a hybrid this year. He played a lot more linebacker on Saturday, and they've got him near the line of scrimmage. He's not the most typical safety. In coverage, he's never had a pick, but he is great near the line of scrimmage, and he can, provide a guy. And, you look at Southern Mississippi, they have a mobile quarterback in Braylon Braxton. He was able to stay around the line of scrimmage and I don't not necessarily spy on him, but, keep him contained. And I think that he'll have a similar role this week with Sam Levitt. I think that he's a good player. He actually led State in tackles in this game, but at the same time, it wasn't just making every tackle. He had more help around him. So he's just a football player. And I know that's a bit of a cliche, but that's what Isaac Smith is. He's a guy that you can trust out there on the field, and he's going to make plays as long as he's out there.
During practice this week, ASU is going to be piping in a lot of crowd noise, a lot of the cowbells going. What kind of atmosphere is in store for the Devils out there on the field in Starkville?
That's kind of the question everybody's asking right now, and Lebby addressed it today at his press conference. He just sent out a form email that went to everybody who's connected to Mississippi State, asking for people to show up. State is doing a coordinated social media thing. The basketball coach Chris Jans tweeted about, "Hey, I hope to see everybody at Davis Wade Stadium." The players are doing it. I'm not sure what the crowd's going to be. I'll be totally honest with you, because on the one hand, this is a top 10 probably when we get to the poll. Arizona State team coming in. It's a night kickoff. It's not going to be overly hot in Starkville. Everything's in place for it to be a big time atmosphere, but it's just been a rough couple of years for Mississippi State since Mike Leach passed away, and fans are I think they're just nervous about jumping on board. So I think it'll be a good crowd. I don't know if it won't be a packed house. It won't be a hard sellout or anything like that. But I think it'll be a good, loud crowd. And you mentioned the cowbells. They will be in full effect, ringing responsibly, as Mississippi State fans like to do. But it will be a different kind of atmosphere than Arizona State's ever faced before, just in terms of those cowbells providing the pre-snap noise.
Kind of similar to how ASU was after so many difficult years. There was even last year, it was like a little bit of hesitation for the fan base before the sellouts near the end of the season. So some parallels there.
I was about to say there's a lot of parallels between year one of Dillingham and Mississippi State fans hope there are parallels between year one and year two of Kenny Dillingham and how he took over a program that was down low and got them turned around. Jeff Levy trying to do the same thing. A little different for him having to play Georgia and Texas and Tennessee this year, but that's the hope at Mississippi State that he can have a turnaround like that.
All right, so let's end on the perhaps the most important question of all for the ASC fans heading down there. What are the food spots they need to try, and maybe the hotels, as you mentioned, some of the good lodging spots.
Plenty of great hotels in the Starkville and the Golden Triangle area. Don't let Kenny Dillingham fool you on that one. The place to go is the Cotton District. That's where you got a bunch of college bars, but some great restaurants there. Two Brothers Smoked Meats, great barbecue, great Southern food. The older brother is kind of a New Orleans style sandwich shop. Really, really good. If you want to go downtown to Restaurant Tyler, that's the best place in town to grab a steak, grab a little bit more of a fancier dinner. Boardtown Pints and Pies is the name of the place. It's a pizza place in the Cotton District. I love it. Plenty of beers on tap. Also across the street at Bulldog Burger. If you're a beer drinker, they got a lot of selections there and great burgers. There's a lot of fantastic food options in Starkville. It's really an underrated food town, and I think wherever you pick, you're going to be doing all right. But those are some of my favorite spots.
Awesome recommendations and awesome insight into what should be a very fun, very important game for both programs. Brian, thank you again for your time.
Anytime, Brad.
We're about to break down the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We don't have any cowbells ringing in here, but that's going to be happening a lot out there. And as Brad can tell you, the folks who attend practices are certainly getting their fill. In addition to the great stuff that we try to bring you every single week, you got to supplement that. Our tag team partner, devilsdigest.com. You got to get in the huddle. You got to get all that elite premium content that you get from the Rivals and On3 network. Y'all know about that merger that happened a few months ago. Gives you just a wide range of information and content you simply cannot beat. And the best place to be as a Sun Devil fan is in the huddle on devilsdigest.com. You're going to get incredible amount of coverage and reports, and that obviously includes but isn't limited to Sun Devil football. They'll get you when basketball season's coming around, baseball, hockey, all the major sports for Arizona State athletics are going to get coverage on devilsdigest.com. It's a great community to be a part of, so we cannot recommend this enough. Get yourself to devilsdigest.com, and if you don't have a subscription for yourself and everybody that you love that's a Sun Devil fan, go ahead and grab one. Once again, that's devilsdigest.com. All right, Brad, here we go. Talking about ASU versus Mississippi State. Of course, this is essentially a rematch from last year's game in Tempe. So that was itself the first meeting between these two teams on the football field. ASU won, as I'm sure y'all recall, 30-23. ASU had a 27-3 halftime lead in that game, allowed the Bulldogs to creep back into it, but a legendary game. You know, I think kind of the first signal that last year was going to be something incredibly special for Cam Scadaboo. 262 rushing yards. That's the second best in school history, I believe.
Eno's 312 against Oregon State.
Yeah, because I think Benny Malone had like an even 250, if I'm not mistaken. That was the record for decades. So it allowed ASU to hold on for a victory there. Now, this will be just ASU's third true road game in the history of the program against an SEC team. As you probably remember, ASU lost at Georgia in 2009 under Dennis Erickson, and then lost at Missouri in 2012 in Todd Graham's debut season. There have been other road games ASU has played against teams that now are in the SEC, but at the time the game was played, that team was not in the SEC. So the Devils are 0-2 in that particular category, trying to avoid making it 0-3 this weekend.
Yeah, some neutral site games as well that could now, I guess, now considered to be in Houston, and of course the Peach Bowl there as well. And it's kind of interesting that like it is a rematch, but like for ASU, most of the roster's back from last year. For Mississippi State, widespread changes that we'll dive into. So it's almost kind of like a rematch in name only.
Yeah. So talking about Mississippi State, and this is a program that's fallen apart some hard times. I mean, the 10 years or so from the Dak Prescott area when they were, in the thick of things in that same graphic that I think we have like tattooed in our brains of ASU being in the top 6 of the college football playoff voting there in 2014.
Number 1.
Mississippi State was right at the top there. Yeah, but things sadly have fallen for them. Last season, they were dead last in the SEC. 2-10 overall record, 0-8 in conference play. The only team last year in the SEC with a winless conference record. So for the Bulldogs, that was the first time since 2002 that they finished winless in conference play, and that 2-10 record tied with 2003 as the worst overall record by the Mississippi State program since their 1-10 finish in 1988. There were some ugly games last season for them. Even though that game against ASU was fairly close, Mississippi State lost 41-17 at home to Toledo the week after that ASU game. And in total of the 10 losses Mississippi State had last year, the one to ASU was the only by single digits. So moving along to this year, again, they were picked last in the preseason SEC poll. And then SEC does first, second, and third team all conference as far as preseason honorees. Like Big 12, they just did like the one team. SEC goes 3 deep. The only player that Mississippi State had recognized was Isaac Smith, a safety / linebacker on the third team. We'll talk about him quite a bit. So you're under second-year head coach Jeff Lebby. He came to the program after spending the previous 2 years at Oklahoma as the OC, and before that was at Ole Miss as the OC for 2 years. So he's expected to bring kind of this high-octane offense. They had some of their young, talented players all transfer out from last year. The freshman ended up playing a lot at quarterback. He transferred. They had some talented receivers. So, as you mentioned, a lot of new faces at Mississippi State as they're really trying to get things going year 2 under Jeff Lebby.
Yeah, I believe in total 65 new players, 37 via the portal. And some of the guys, there are some familiar faces. Blake Shapen is back. He, I believe, was knocked out for the season after game 4 or so. So that was a big blow to them. Devon Booth's one of the more explosive playmakers in the SEC. But yeah, other than that, there's a lot of new faces that we'll dive into. But this is still an SEC roster. This is still an SEC team. They have some size, some athleticism, some length at some key positions. And, even like the worst team in the SEC is still a pretty talented group of guys.
And so week 1 for them, they had a 34-17 victory against Southern Miss. That is a team that's in a world of hurt. I think my brain must just be stuck in the Larry Fedora era of, I don't know, near 15 years ago, because I think he was in that conversation of our very, very early shows of him and Kevin Sumlin and all the coaching candidates. My goodness, the difference time makes. Because,
June Jones maybe in that mix.
Oh, Lord. Because last year, Southern Miss was 1-11. I believe they won 3 games the previous season, so we're talking 4 wins over the last 2 full seasons combined. So, the score and some things about it, not terribly dissimilar between, what ASU did against NAU. Essentially, they doubled up Southern Miss, scored in the 30s, allowed in the teens. It's essentially what ASU did. So, again, there's some highlights there. They got a win. I mean, this is a team, obviously, very, very polar opposite expectations heading into this season between Mississippi State and Arizona State. But after week 1, for either team, as with a lot of teams in the country, you just don't entirely know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and it's kind of a tale of 2 halves game. I was watching them in action, and just Southern Miss and Mississippi State were kind of going back and forth a little bit in that first half before kind of the Bulldogs pulling away in that second half. You could see that the superior size, strength, athleticism is really on display. Yeah, that Southern Miss team is in a world of hurt, even though they're kind of basically Marshall 2.0 with all their new faces and their off season. But overall, it seems like hard. You always want to not pull any kind of big conclusions from week 1, but I think it's safe to say that Mississippi State is better now. Whether they'll be good, very much TBD. But I think this, from what they had to go through last year in year 1 under Coach Lebby, I think that they've taken a step forward. We'll see how many steps.
And even for them to get to 34 points against Southern Miss, I mean, it may not seem like something you're going to shout from the rooftops, but goodness, last year against FBS opponents, they only scored more than 28 or more points on 3 occasions. Did Mississippi State 28 in a loss to Florida, 31 in a loss to Georgia, 45 points against a UMass team there. I guess the best way to summarize it is Mississippi State has not beaten a power conference team since a 7-3 victory against Arkansas on October 21st of 2023.
Oh,
that is their reality.
7-3.
Yeah.
Barn burner.
They got that done. So yeah, as we're talking about through graduation and the transfer portal, Mississippi State lost its top performing quarterback because yes, Blake Shapen was the season opening starter in what was supposed to be his final year of eligibility, but he got hurt in the fourth game and redshirted. And they also lost some, talented pass catchers. Remember that Coleman who had that dart for that touchdown. He ended up transferring. So there are some new names if you all got familiar with what Mississippi State had last season. So they've got that familiar face at quarterback, Blake Shapen, not just familiar because he's been in college football for a while. As some of you may remember, he led some very good Baylor teams. I think they won the Big 12, if I'm not mistaken, or at least competed for the conference title.
Yeah, he came on in relief and really kind of put together a really good performance.
But beyond that, why his name is so familiar is that he was a verbal commit for Arizona State football and baseball for ballpark of about 6 months from June through December of 2019. He ended up playing baseball at Baylor. I don't think he's playing baseball at Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. So Blake Shapen is there in total, including this past week's game. He has 6,818 career passing yards, a real solid 45 touchdown to 15 interception ratio for his career, 225 career rushing yards with 8 scores. I don't know why I think of him as more of like a dual threat mobile quarterback, and he can move.
Yeah.
But 225 career rushing yards for a guy who's played several seasons is not really the evidence of a true dual threat.
And one of those guys who's not going to, kill you with his legs, but can do so. And obviously the weird NCAA stat quirk of the sacks coming off of QB's rushing yards, impacting that a little bit. But yeah, he's an experienced guy, and that is obviously he's one of those guys that like the all the firepower that's coming back in the SEC. But he's a guy that has some weapons, but we'll get to like that experience. I think is first and foremost amongst his ability or his attributes coming into this game. Second year in the system in the offense of Jeff Lebby, so I think that in itself is going to be kind of a multiplier for them as well. You mentioned the really good touchdown interception ratio as well. That's pretty good because a lot of times these games come down to the margins, and a turnover here, a turnover there, or a smart throw to avoid a turnover here or avoid a turnover there can make all the difference.
And against Southern Miss, he had generally a very efficient game with really kind of only one exception there. Completed 26 of 34 passes against Southern Miss. That's 76.5%. That will get it done. 270 yards with a touchdown. He did throw an interception. He had 5 net rushing yards on 6 carries there in that victory. So again, a very talented, seasoned quarterback who has played at some big time football. And he's done so in the Big 12. Last year against ASU had a solid game, but ASU got to him enough to where it wasn't that big of a difference maker. They also have former Florida State transfer Luke Kromenhoek. He was the number 4 quarterback prospect in the country, the 2024 class, just a couple years ago. Transferred to Mississippi State this offseason. He saw some action in week 1, completing 1 of his 3 passes. He also ran for 21 yards on 3 carries. The running backs, they've got a real good duo that they're using. You talked about Davon Booth, Fluff Bothwell, one of the better names in college football. Both these guys are going to be, getting a lot of action this weekend's game. First, talking about Booth, he was a third-team All-SEC pick last season as an all-purpose player. He had 1,231 all-purpose yards in 2024 to rank 5th in the conference. Bothwell had an outstanding freshman season last year at South Alabama. Gotta love a school whose initials are USA. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, he upgraded and transferred to Mississippi State, rather. Last year, Bothwell had 832 rushing yards, an outstanding 7.5 yards per carry average, 13 touchdowns. He also caught 13 passes. As a freshman last year, again, that 230-pound Bothwell had 4 100-yard rushing games and 5 games with 2 rushing touchdowns. In game 1 for this duo, Booth was the team leader with 79 yards on 16 carries with a touchdown, along with a 12-yard reception. Bothwell added 43 yards on 10 carries, but he had 2 scores. Also, Johnny Daniels is someone who'll get in the mix, 28 rushing yards on 4 carries, while he also caught 3 passes for 19 yards. He's kind of a mixture of alcohol names. It's like Johnny Walker and Jack Daniels mixed together because he spells Johnny, the N-N-I-E, like Johnny Walker. This is like a booze heavy. I think folks had to have some drinks after that ASU game last weekend, so I guess a booze heavy episode tonight.
It is SEC country after all, but yeah, the trio there is something that I think is definitely the strength of the offense. Bothwell, watching him at South Al last year, really impressive. Really one of my favorite kind of up and coming young backs at that G6 level. But Booth, yeah, I think is going to be the guy that ASU's got to make sure that they got to lock down on that. ASU's run defense, with all the criticism, it was pretty good. It pretty much put NAU's run game on ice for the entirety of that game. We obviously know what they were able to do against the run throughout the course of the 2024 season. So this is going to be an interesting challenge, though, because I think all the backs are dangerous in their own way. And then you throw the kind of like dual threat of Daniels, who can, be an effective pass catcher as well.
Yeah, and so moving on to the wide receivers, that group figures to have a starting list of Brennan Thompson, Jordan Mosley, and Anthony Evans III. Now, Thompson, he began his career at Texas before spending the last 2 seasons at Oklahoma. Now he's capping things up at Mississippi State. He had team highs of 7 receptions for 92 yards last week. He is regarded as the fastest player on the team. Evans, who transferred in from Georgia, had 4 catches for 36 yards a week ago. At Oklahoma, Thompson had 26 combined receptions for 471 yards with 4 touchdowns across the last 2 seasons. Evans had 13 combined catches for Georgia across the 23 to 24 season. So those guys, maybe getting a little bit more run at Mississippi State than they were at previous schools. A guy to keep in mind and keep your eye on at tight end, Sidhu Traore. He's listed as the starter. With what he did last week, he is at an even 100 career receptions as a tight end. He's Mississippi State's leading returning receiver from last year in terms of receptions, as he had 34 in 2024. This is someone I believe at Arkansas State had 50-plus catches. I think he was supposed to be at Colorado and bounced. He was one of those. I don't know. Is it the Shaman? What is it with tight ends and getting to Colorado and just leaving and then going and balling out elsewhere? I don't know. But, there are some talented receivers and that tight end, though they, again, have to replace some big-time contributors at receiver from a year ago.
Yeah, and Thompson is a guy that really jumped out to me. Obviously, he has the both sides of Red River on his resume, but, having a chance to have a more prominent role last week, good start there. And, Traore at tight end is definitely something that ASU's got to lock down across the middle. But, yeah, I think that the Evans and Thompson duo is going to be really interesting because we talked all offseason long about Keith Abney and Javen Robinson being such a experienced returning starting duo at corner, and I thought they were okay. There were the NAU probably had some more big games, some more 20-plus yard plays through the air than I would have liked to have seen, and so I just want to see if that's more of kind of the aberration. Maybe DC Brian Ward, keeping things fairly vanilla. And it's interesting to see exactly how ASU's pass defense goes up against as we talked about, very experienced quarterback in Blake Shapen, but also some weapons and some receivers that have obviously some high level talent.
Yeah, so you really want to see those defensive backs continue to step up. You obviously want to see the defensive front get to the quarterback better and more consistently. You feel good about ASU's run defense, and so you feel like they should be able to assert what they do there in that capacity. But really want to see them get to shape and limit what can be done in the pass game. So flipping things over to the defense for Mississippi State. So last week against Southern Miss, Bulldogs held USM to 102 net rushing yards on 35 carries. That's just a little bit under 3 yards per carry without allowing a touchdown run, while they also held the Golden Eagles to under 200 passing yards, 199. Now, as we said, Southern Miss, not a great ball club coming into that game, but those are still, some solid achievements there. Some of the personnel to keep in mind: Isaac Smith, he's listed as a linebacker, also listed elsewhere as a safety, ranked 7th nationally, and led the SEC last year with 127 tackles. But despite missing a game and playing only 11 contests, he was 2nd team All SEC, 3rd team preseason All SEC. Kind of weird that he would drop in that regard. Also tied for the team lead in tackles last week. No surprise there. Just someone that's all over the field, just collecting, box score tallies left and right.
Yeah, he's a guy that's, is kind of one of those tackling machines, kind of a little Chris Young can play up in the box a little bit. And in the opener, at least, and this heading into this year, they're playing him a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. But also fellow safety Brylan Lanier was the Pro Football Focus on SEC Team of the Week as well. So, some of that back end, also talking about some of the guys in that secondary, some issues coming to the year, perhaps at cornerback, or maybe some questions but some good size. I mean, they have Kelly Jones at 6'4", Jet Jefferson 6'1" as your starting cornerback duo, along with some of those accomplished safeties. So we saw ASU's passing game, be pretty one-dimensional, effective, but one-dimensional. But that could be an interesting matchup here on Saturday.
Yeah, it was really video game like for ASU. Like if you're playing on a hard setting, it's like, all right, I just got to go every single play to the guy that I know is going to catch it. Yeah, you talked about Lanier. He had 6 tackles with an interception last week. He had 53 tackles last year for Mississippi State. He's also spent some time at Alabama, Indiana, and at the JUCO level, so a well-traveled athlete right there. Elsewhere on defense, linebacker Nick Mitchell, he had 80 tackles in 2024, where he started all 12 games. Defensive end Will Whitson, he was named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week for his efforts against Southern Miss in the opener. 4 tackles, including 2.5 for loss with a sack and 4 quarterback hurries. Again, already talked about Lanier. Looking back to last year, Mississippi State allowed nearly 217 rushing yards per game. ASU really beefed that total up with what they did behind Cam Scadaboo. They allowed 24 rushing touchdowns, obviously, and even 2 per game for them. Altogether, in 2024, Mississippi State allowed 456 yards of total offense per game. So, against an FBS team, the caliber of Southern Miss, but, a team that is not one of the star-studded ball clubs at the FBS level. Similar to ASU, similar to a lot of teams, you don't truly know how much you can take away from the good or the bad of week 1. So again, this is going to be a proving ground really for both teams.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how ASU's offensive line, now with 1 week of live fire reps under their belt, with the Ben Coleman experiment continuing at center, handles an SEC defensive line. Obviously the trench play is what historically has set the SEC apart from the other conferences. And you mentioned Will Whitson; they're coming off the edge spot there with what he's able to do. But the defensive tackles going to be really interesting to me with Dre Bledsoe coming over from Texas, DJ Reed, an Auburn guy as well. Interesting to see how they defend the run. With a accomplished backfield, a backfield for the Devils that I think is going to get a lot more work than they did in the opener. If it could be anything like a repeat, then obviously ASU is in great shape to get the road win. Or if it's going to be a little bit more evenly matched this time around.
Will Whitson, I mean, you could go real like Stewie Griffin on that one, like Will Wheaton with the Will Whitson type situation. We might have to get that one to the old man when he's calling Whitson's name and see if he wants to pop in a couple Will Whitsons. So, all right. Now, a couple other things outside the offense and defense I think are real notable. Number one, kicker Kyle Ferry started the 2025 season with an unprecedented achievement. He kicked a 55-yard field goal against Southern Miss. It's the longest in Mississippi State history, which seems kind of wild that 55 is the long for that school. The previous record was 54 yards set 40 years ago. 1985.
A thick, humid air.
That must be all those cowbells do something, with the trajectory of the kicks. Who knows? This one gave me a little bit of peace to find out, because this was an area that was excruciatingly aggravating about ASU last week, which was, of course, the dozen penalties the Sun Devils committed. Mississippi State had 14 penalties.
Old their beer.
For 119 yards last week against Southern Miss. So that is the kind of thing that, at least if that aspect of the game can be more or less balanced out, or if they're both concerned about it, that at least levels that playing field for ASU.
Yeah, Ferry is going to be really interesting, because now we have 2 kickers who have 55+ range, and this is a game that we'll get into. It could be evenly matched. At that third phase of special teams could ultimately play the difference, and maybe it comes down to one of these strong leg dudes having a hit from 50+.
So before we jump into our keys to the ball game and give our scoreboard predictions, a huge shout out and thank you to Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are evaluated by their Patient Services Committee. SDFC Cares is the flagship program through which Sun Devil Family Charities provides financial assistance to the qualified applicants. Individuals and their immediate family members who have an affiliation with Arizona State University and are facing financial hardship due to serious health or medical conditions are encouraged to submit an application. What that means here is that if you or someone that you love is going through a financial hardship that is a result of a medical issue, as long as they got some tie to Arizona State, and if you're listening to this, you probably do, there might be financial support that Sun Devil Family Charities can provide. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to an unexpected medical condition. Volunteer and sponsorship opportunities are also available, and these can all be found online on their website at sundevilfamily.org. All right, let's jump into those keys. Brad, what do you say? What's number one for you there?
Just don't get 12 penalties again. It's just like it's the most basic thing. And we have not seen a Kenny Dillingham coached Sun Devil team play that sloppy and that undisciplined. So far, that makes it the aberration. Just make damn sure that it's not a trend.
That's on my list too, is cut the penalties. I mean, it is unacceptable and inexcusable. All offseason, we have heard about the returning production, the returning starters. This is a team that obviously reached a tremendously high level last year. There should be no early season jitters. There should be no, we got to get our feet wet because we got a lot of new pieces in play. There are just no excuses for it. Not that any are being made, but that is something that in this game needs to be cut in half from what ASU did. Because if you're getting in that, closing in on or obviously in excess of double digits, that is a great way to start the season 1-1.
All right. So my second key, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And ASU's path to victory last year, run the damn ball. I think that they're going to be doing that a lot in Starkville on Saturday night. We got the flashes here and there. Kyson Brown gashing through the defense and catching a lot of passes. Raleek Brown just almost breaking it a couple times. And, we saw his electrifying ability both as a runner and a receiver. Even Kanye Udo getting into that mix as well. The offensive line, I think, got a little bit humbled and, maybe was playing a little bit on their back heels with so many pass attempts. I think this is going to be a Sun Devil offense that, after week one and doing whatever they did is going to get back to their strength. And even without Cam Scadaboo running for 262 yards, I think the running backs are going to have a big day against that better, but still kind of rebuilding Bulldog defense. And I think that you're going to see that backfield have a big game.
For ASU to run the ball, that is a key of mine for sure. So pretty much duplicating, hit for hit here in the first two, but kind of a footnote among that is doing so not only for the purpose it serves, but also to take off the shoulders, the arm, and the feet and legs of Sam Levitt. Don't put everything on him. I know that he's a very dynamic player and he's a very exciting player and he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But you just don't want to put him into situations that can be problematic, because ASU should be able to line up and run the ball in a very traditional and vanilla fashion and have a great deal of success against Mississippi State. And they have, a diverse group that when they got the opportunity really showed some things. I mean, Raleek Brown looks like a guy that can be a game changer. Like someone, I know it's very lofty to live up to a 5-star, reputation as he was a prospect out of high school. But man, he looked like something special out there against NAU. So you can use these guys in a variety of roles. I even like the small sample you saw at Akani Udo. Like he looked good running the ball. And this is a guy who ran for over 1,000 yards. So run the ball in a deliberate fashion. Establish the run, not just a few runs here and there, and you're mainly getting your run game out of your quarterback scrambling. Just be deliberate with it. You don't have to be fancy. You don't have to be cute. I get that it's an SEC opponent, but this isn't necessarily your Georgia or Alabama defense that you're, typically seeing. It's a team that, you should be able to go eye to eye with and be able to get a lot of yards running the ball.
My final key is to diversify your passing portfolio. We know Jordan Tyson can do it, and we would like to see him continue to do it. If you're a Sun Devil fan, I mean, this is a guy that you want the ball in his hands a lot. You also want the ball to go a little bit elsewhere from time to time. Jaron Hamilton play more than one snap, and hopefully that they were holding some things. And again, when asked about that specifically, Dillingham said it was just kind of what the NAU defense gave. Well, this is a time where you need some more passing options for Sam Levitt, because this is going to be a much better defense that they're facing from last week. Whether Jalen Moss is able to come back and play in that game, you have other receivers. Malik McLean flashed a little bit hopefully some of these catches that he makes on Saturday are going to be able to count. That tight end group is talented, very talented. We've seen them in action throughout spring and fall camps. They're pretty much a non-factor in the passing game on last Saturday. This is an opportunity, I think, with this Bulldog defense to make some plays over the middle, along the seams that will help open things up for your other wide receivers. So just you have the weapons. We've talked about them. ASU's got a pretty good defense, and this is a group of pass catchers that performed well and really jumped out to us. Seeing them in practice each and every day. All right, they're playing. Maybe perhaps hold some cards close to the vest with the FCS opener. Now is the time to start playing.
In previous seasons, it's happened upon occasion where I've had like a key that has just been on repeat until it's fixed. Like I'm just going to say it every single week until it gets better. I'm not going to try to get creative. I'm going to say it every single week until it gets better. The one for me is going to be get in the backfield on defense. I was not pleased whatsoever with ASU and their efforts to get in the backfield against Northern Arizona, whether that was against the run or the pass, but especially against the pass. They did add up a few sacks. They came late in the game, and the first one, coming from your cornerback, it was a great play. But, you need to see ASU from, the defensive line and the linebackers get a better push into the backfield. As we talked about, Blake Shapen, the quarterback for Mississippi State, is an experienced passer and someone that, doesn't make a ton of mistakes relative to the, plus plays that he makes. They have a really solid 1-2 punch at running back, and, especially Bothwell, like he's a pretty much a touchdown machine. So when you get into those red zone situations, he's the guy they're going to be looking at. You need to be disruptive. You need to force them into errors. You just simply cannot allow Mississippi State to run the ball on you on a consistent basis, nor can you allow Shapen to have time in the pocket to pick and choose what he's going to do with the ball. I want to see a big difference being made. I want to see this being an area where you look back at the game and say, yep, ASU defensively was being pretty vanilla against NAU because they went out and they got 6 sacks and, 10 tackles for loss against Mississippi State. But they need to go out and do it because, again, that's been the most repetitive issue we've discussed all off season as far as things that need to be fixed. And from what I saw against NAU, didn't make much progress at all in fixing that in my eyes.
All right, time for our predictions. I'll start things off. I think that the concerns that came out from ASU's Week 1 game are valid. I mean, there were 12 penalties. There were a lot of just self-inflicted mistakes and errors, things that really we haven't seen out of a Dillingham coach team. And now they're going on the road to 50,000 cowbells clanging in their head. It's going to be looks like it's going to be a pretty good crowd. It's their blackout, their dark mode, as I think they're calling it. So there's going to be a lot of excitement, and some fans down there in Starkville are been kind of hungry for some excitement after a couple of rough seasons there. And this is a Mississippi State team that is better, and ASU's got a lot to prove. Getting a big road win is going to be, I think, a big catalyst, another kind of big milepost on their title defense run. And I think this is going to be a different Sun Devil team. This is a team that has so much back from last year, that the program culture is strong. And one of those core tenets of the culture has been resiliency. And, even though they had kind of a multi-score win in Week 1, there's still, those elements of doubt. This is a team that thrives on having a chip on their shoulder. And I think, you maybe whether it's dropping in the rankings a little bit, or maybe all of a sudden some of those fans that were so happy to activate the Valley now having maybe not second thoughts, but just like, hey, wait a minute here. I think this is going to be a team that's going to be looking to make a difference. That said, Mississippi State again is better. They got an experienced quarterback. They got some good playmakers in the backfield. And I think they got better personnel on defense. So I don't see this being a game where ASU is going to come out and put up was it 27-3 at the half last year to multi-score lead and kind of coast their way to another victory. I think this is going to be a probably much better back and forth affair. I see ASU leveraging their own backfield a lot more and to a greater success than they did last week. I think obviously Jordan Tyson's going to do Jordan Tyson things. And I do think that Sam Levitt's maybe going to be a little bit, more socialist in his the distribution of wealth through the air. But I think ultimately ASU is just simply the better team at this point. Mississippi State is better than they were last year, and it seems like the trajectory overall is up. And who knows if this game's played in the future? But as right now in week 2, I think ASU is still the better team, the more tested team, the more veteran team, and ASU leaves Starkville 2-0 after a 30-24 victory.
So we still don't know, through all the great things that have happened since the beginning of last football season, we still don't know if we are gone from the days of just the classic ASU moments happening. And when I say that, I think y'all know that I'm not really saying that in a very positive light. This game for me reeks of high potential for one of those classic ASU moments of, a nationally ranked top 12 team is ASU going against a team that, for all logical reasons, they should beat by multiple scores. Team that, as we mentioned, hasn't beaten a power conference team since October 2023. Didn't win a conference game last year. But again, we've seen that. We've heard that song before of that team just rallying things together and pulling one off, especially in front of their home crowd, especially with their 1-0 as well. So if they're wiping the slate clean of last year, they're perfect as it can be for this season. We've seen things on social media or, promotion that Mississippi State is doing as far as like this being that game they need to rally the fans for. So I'm concerned about just that extra jolt that we've seen in some cases, certainly more back in those crazy Pac-12 after dark type of days. You think back to losses over the years against the likes of Washington State and Oregon State and just those kind of games. And this could be a game where maybe ASU, they might think that they can, do something with a certain measure of ease, and that can cause some frustration. That can cause you to force things that where, okay, you just start to throw to Jordan Tyson every single time, or Sam Levitt takes in his own hands or feet and runs when he maybe shouldn't, or, just tries to win the game himself, or maybe the defense gets a little over aggressive, trying to hit a grand slam, with every swing, so to speak. Just something weird. Just feel some weird vibration in the air. And I don't know if I really mean this prediction. I don't know if it's from the heart. I don't know if it's a little frustration. I don't know if it's a little like indirect bulletin board material for ASU. But my prediction that I'll put on the record here is it's like what, a mid after, it's like a 4:30 kickoff Arizona time.
It's a night, Arizona time, but it'll be a night game in Starkville. It's 6:30 kick.
So I think by the time the sun sets in Tempe, you're gonna have a lot of pissed off ASU fans, and the takes will be hot after a 34-31 Mississippi State victory. Now then, before we wrap things up on that positive and happy note,
I should have gone second.
While many ASU stores have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. Founded, owned, and operated by ASU alumni since 1992, every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Many of their competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, students, fans, and alumni who give input that Cactus Sports values and helps create some of the products that they buy and sell. When you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that you truly help support a local Sun Devil small business. Cactus Sports is located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe. They're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays from 10 to 6. They may have different hours on home game day, so keep an eye out for that. You can also view their full inventory and shop online at cactussports.com with free domestic ground shipping of orders of $75 or more. Be sure to follow Cactus Sports on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Cactus Sports AZ, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cactus Sports AZ. Locally owned and ASU alumni, operated since 1992. Shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local.
All right, and so that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Doves. I'd like to thank our guests, Brian Hadad and Ben Coleman. As mentioned a moment ago, this game will kick off at 4:30 p.m. Arizona time. If you're making the trip out to Starkville, 6:30. TV is on ESPN2, actual cable,
So
not streaming.
you might actually be able to visibly see the ball game this Saturday. We got to go with might, nothing guaranteed, but odds are good.
So yeah, definitely tune in, support, go if you can, and make sure definitely that you will follow the show on the social media side, on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devil, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and give me follow on all things social at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healey 42. Tell me how dumb my prediction is, or tell me that I'm really smart about it. Just give it a follow and get involved.
Or if you support all of our amazing sponsors, his prediction will be wrong and you'll all be happy, and our sponsors will be happy as well. And then you can give us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We will be back next week to review exactly what went down in Stark Vegas and look ahead to ASU's home game against Texas State.